另外，我们还有林启梅以及文仆言来自台湾人权促进会。
是翁国燕。
I am Wong Guoyan from the CW and the Taiwan Human Rights Association. Before this meeting, I actually proposed a few issues I would like to address. That is about the reply number 12 to the LOI. In terms of the Discrimination Act, government's report said that there's still a lot of controversy. However, in the white paper on human rights promotion issued by the President, they already decided to enact Discrimination Act. So we believe that speedy efforts must be made to enact the discrimination law because the existing laws do not provide sufficient protection of the right against discrimination. Moreover, discrimination or the ban on discrimination against people of different sexual orientations has not been fully implemented. Moreover, in the Employment Service Act and in the Act on Gender Equality in Employment, there is no such mention of discrimination against LGBT. Moreover, in the Employment Service Act, they provided an exhaustive list or supposedly exhaustive list to provide such protection. However, in other laws, we don't see such listing available. Discrimination can be direct and indirect. However, in existing laws and regulations, we do not have a very specific definition of discrimination. Most provisions only touch upon direct discrimination. Next, sexual harassment law has not been sufficient in providing a ban against discrimination against people like LGBT, and differential treatment of people based on gender has not been eliminated completely in existing laws and regulations. And for employment discrimination, laborers do have a chance to file complaints, but in other areas, you have to wait until the competent authorities to investigate cases of investigation. In terms of reparation and compensation, right now, only laborers that have been discriminated against would have the right to get compensation. Otherwise, you will have to go through the civil litigation in order to get compensated. And right now, the existing regulation requires the employer, the burden of proof is on the employer in the Employment Service Act. However, this is not the case in other discrimination-related acts and laws. So I think we need to have a comprehensive discrimination act so as to align all the existing provisions in different laws and regulations. Despite the fact that the government report says there's still controversy, we believe time has passed and we really have to take action in a timely manner now. Thank you.
To Taiwan Democracy Watch, Su Waichun, please.
Mr. Chairperson, distinguished experts, I'm Xu Meiqun. On behalf of Taiwan Democracy Watch, I would like to talk about some issues Taiwan has in promoting CCPR. I think in the next couple of days, we will see these issues are pertinent to the Article 25 of the ICCPR and the human rights structure or infrastructure in Taiwan. First of all, right now, in Taiwan, there is no room for small political parties to maneuver. This is because we do have a system to ask political parties to provide an amount of bond before they can participate in the election. So many little political parties cannot participate in the elections. Moreover, the electoral system has resulted in some unfairness in terms of the competition among different political parties, particularly for small political parties. Moreover, for the disadvantaged groups, very often they don't have a chance to voice their opinions in the political arena. For example, many policies do not have to go through the public hearing process before they are finalized. For example, when some development projects involve the expropriation of farmland or private land, such policies did not go through public hearing before they were implemented. Moreover, sometimes representatives from civil groups may be invited by, say, the opposition party to the Legislative Yuan to express their views, but they faced boycott by the ruling party legislators. Another issue is the KMT has enjoyed disproportional power and influence in the political and economic arena. For example, during the past presidential and general elections, the KMT actually used the national resources to collect intelligence on their competitors in the elections. Not to mention, bribery has been carried out by these candidates of the KMT, but no investigation ever took place. Another issue has to do with the assets accumulated by the KMT over the past decades. This, again, contributes to their unfair edge in the elections. So laws should be amended to change the unfair electoral system. However, the KMT has been in opposition to such reform efforts. Another issue has to do with freedom of speech. Since 2008, the government at central and local levels have used the Assembly Act to prevent people to go to the street to demonstrate. On the other hand, the monopoly of media has posed a threat to free press and freedom of speech, as mentioned by our legislator a while ago. Moreover, government fails to protect the human rights of citizens in other countries, of citizens in a foreign country. For example, after Taiwan signed ECFA with mainland China, Taiwan government did not take a proactive effort to protect the rights, the human rights of its citizens doing business in mainland China. In 2012, there was an incident about Zhongdingbang, which is another a testament to Taiwanese government's failure to protect the human rights of its citizens in other countries. Last but not least, Taiwan, as a democracy, has seen its human rights protection deteriorate in the name of democracy because of what the government has been doing. So because of that, we are pessimistic about the outlook of Taiwan's human rights protection.
Thank you very much. Please.
Can I ask through you that because all the NGO representatives are so passionate, it's very loud, and then it's not easy for us to hear the translation. So if you can make some distance to the microphone, I can hear much clearer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Taiwan Rural Front, Heisoo Shin.
Yeah, I will try my best. It's okay? Okay. 我的名字叫徐世荣。
I'm Xu Sirong. I'm from the Farmers Association. I'm also a professor at Chenji University. I'm also the third research department director at the Chenji University. I would like to mention the list of issue number. I would like to mention the LOI for ICCPR. In recent years in Taiwan, Taiwan has been engaged in urban renewal or land expropriation, and therefore some people have to be evicted from where they live. So on behalf of our organization, I have 5 points raised. I think in your hands you have my summary statements, both in English and in Chinese. First of all, according to ICSCR General Comment 7th, Item 19, state parties are requested to provide various types of information pertaining directly to the practice of forced evictions. Unfortunately, in our state reports, which was submitted to the review committees, there was no information in this regard. Necessary information was not provided at all. So I think our state report is in violation to ICCPR General Comments number 7. Secondly, under the current legal framework in Taiwan, the state is required to hold hearings before land expropriations. However, currently the hearings are only superficial, and they are one-way unilateral hearings. The government used these hearings to explain how it is going to expropriate. The landowners or interested parties' opinions are not being considered. The government did not hear their voices. And civil society organizations have long demanded change to a more vigorous mode of hearings, but the government so far has not given any positive response. My third point is, for victims of forced evictions, the government only provides monetary compensation. The government does not provide settlement, which I think is very important. And alternative housing, I believe, is also an issue the committee members care a lot about. Again, the monetary compensation is a lot less than the actual market value of the land. So the victims are not being able to use this money to purchase similar houses or land. which means that those who are evicted have to leave their home and cannot find better or similar places to live. And my fourth point is that by Taiwanese law, by law, only the state is empowered to expropriate land. But Taiwan is different. The developers in Taiwan are given the authority by the government to expropriate land. So the situation in Taiwan is very different from the one in Europe, US, and in Japan. According to Urban Renewal Act Article 11, developers are allowed to designate geographical scope, design urban renewal project, set up schemes of right swap, etc. So developers have a lot of power, and developers have the right to organize hearings. So they own the system, they have the rights, and the rights of the people are adversely affected. And an article of the Urban Renewal Act states that as long as 67% of effective landowners are persuaded or forced to agree with the project or the developers, the rest of the people are required by law to go alone. So the rest are sacrificed in the process of urban renewal. My fifth point is that the food self-sufficiency rate in Taiwan is 32%, which is a lot smaller than Korea and Japan. Many land expropriation happens in rural areas or in indigenous communities. The government keep turning high-quality agrarian land into construction sites. According to data released by Taiwan between 1995 and 2009, more than 49,000 hectares of farmland were transferred to non-agricultural use. Of these, 33,000 hectares were lost to new or expanded urban planning zones. And we can see that the number of people the urban planning zones intended to accommodate is actually more than 6 million people. So, despite the fact that there is a lack of agricultural land, the government, in the name of developing the industry, establish lots of science parks or science premises, which is to develop agricultural land in the pursuit of economic development. But those who lost the most are the farmers, are the landowners. And this is all because of the land expropriation that we are losing our food self-sufficiency. It is almost as if the Taiwanese government is committing suicide. The government has forgotten that food self-sufficiency is a very important issue for any countries. This concludes my statement.
I'd like to go on a little bit to give some NGOs still the possibility to speak now. And of course we have another NGO meeting from 5 to 7 when then the others could speak. I also heard that there are members of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Human Rights who would like to speak. So we would also give them the floor in about 10 minutes. So first I ask the Freedom of the Media Association of Taiwan Journalists, Chen Heisoo Shin. Please, you have the floor.
各位委员好，我是
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chen Xiaoying from Association of Taiwan Journalists. We have 18 years of history, and we are a member of the International Association of Journalists. We care a lot about media freedom, and therefore we pay close attention to persecution to journalists around the world. We show our support to journalists who have faced that challenge, including journalists in China. Given that we're facing our own problems in Taiwan. Now, the merge and acquisition of media organization is a global trend, but it is a worse problem in Taiwan because the government is being too passive and supervise mergers and acquisitions. And the China factor is one of our biggest concerns because the Chinese fund or the Chinese political influence or other influence in other aspects are gradually controlling the media in Taiwan. China sometimes does not use direct financial power to control the media in Taiwan. Instead, it uses some proxies. For example, the Chinese government uses some Taiwanese businessmen to purchase news and media in Taiwan and to influence the impartiality of media. So these news may spruce up or put a lot of good words about China. We think this is a very serious issue because media is very powerful. It influences the public opinions. So what China wants to control is public opinions, and they do that by using Taiwanese proxies in Taiwan. The largest media conglomerate in Taiwan is the 11 Group. The owner of the 11 Group has become the richest man in Taiwan because his business in China is very successful. And after he became so successful, he has purchased 3 TV channels, he owned 3 national news, he owned 2 magazines and 1 website. Now more than that, he wanted to purchase the cable TV. Most of the population in Taiwan watch cable TV. And the cable TV systems control what channels or what news the public get to see. This case was a high-profile case, and therefore in September last year, we organized a demonstration. There were more than 10,000 Taiwanese people joining the protest because this owner of 11 Group keep using media to attack people who do not agree with him, and the omission, the non-activeness of the government is making the issue even worse. The Apple Daily is now in the process of being purchased by the conglomerate again, and in fact, a Home of Freedom report published by the United States already said that these type of mergers and acquisition cases threaten the press freedom in Taiwan. And also in our own human rights reports published in April last year, it is already stated that the conglomerates keep buying media power. But right after the publication of the reports, the NCC in Taiwan passed the mergers and acquisition case proposed by the 11 Group. And this year, the DPP legislators at the Legislative Yuan proposed to change or revise the broadcast and media law in Taiwan, but it was blocked by the KMT. So Van Boven has mentioned that it seems that there are so many revisions proposed by the legislators, but the Legislative Yuan did not pass it. Why? This is because the president is the chair of the KMT party. So on the one hand, he tells the legislative yuan to do this and that, but on the other hand, he tells the KMT legislators to block the revisions. So as Professor Van Boven says that the government seems to be stopping the media issue, and right before you come, the government proposed to draft a new law to stop these type of problems. But it is a very complicated act. It is used to cheat the Taiwanese people, and the KMT legislators do not want to pass this act at all. So I think this draft will not be passed, and the same problem will remain. This is how our government does things. So on the one hand, it uses laws, it does some paperwork to show that it is doing something. However, on the other hand, it is not implementing. The government is lying to the people in Taiwan. And again, I have to restate that media in Taiwan is very important in influencing public opinions. However, in the reality, because many of the news channels are owned by businessmen, and therefore things such as human rights or as this review conference is not even covered in our news. And Taiwan has a public broadcasting channel, which is a very important TV channel and a website channel for people. But the government is using its power to influence the impartiality of this station. So I think these several issues around media conglomerates are truly serious.
Thank you very much. The next one would be the Taiwan Association for Human Rights, Shi Zhengfeng. Please.
Chairperson, distinguished guests, in order to facilitate efficient communication, I'll conduct my testimony in Mandarin while I have my English transcript ready for you. 当前国民党的这个政府的这个原住民政策呢，基本上是要把在同化的大目标之下。
In essence, the indigenous policy of the current government is assimilation by means of welfare colonialism. Its policy goal is to turn them into the human beings. Although multiculturalism is enshrined in the constitutional amendment, the mainstream society tends to consider indigenous peoples objects for cultural consumption, discriminating against indigenous peoples in various ways and contexts. Even the indigenous fundamental law was stipulated and passed in 2005, but other measures have not been proposed to facilitate the implementation of the fundamental law. Worst of all, the government has attempted to sabotage the fundamental law in the draft Indigenous Autonomy Bill. So the points I would like to make include: one, the right to self-determination. After the Typhoon Morocco floods, tribal peoples were forced to move away from their homes. In terms of rights to property, traditional territories of the indigenous peoples are designated as the public reserved lands. And indigenous peoples lost control of the natural resources on their land. The government also exploits indigenous lands without due consultation with the indigenous peoples. Thirdly, rights to culture. While indigenous languages are becoming extinct, the government has done nothing to help preserve these indigenous languages. The Ministry of Education and the Council of Indigenous Peoples are not doing their parts in this regard. As for higher education, the government has done very little to help indigenous students. In fact, employers do not want to use or hire indigenous peoples either. So fourthly, rise to economy. As tribal economy is in crisis, the indigenous peoples have no choice but to squat in urban areas, and the average income of indigenous peoples is much lower than the rest of the society. And we think the affirmative action clause in the indigenous rights to work has been largely neglected. Fifthly, social rights. The non-indigenous society tends to think the indigenous peoples are only good at dancing and singing, so the performances by indigenous peoples are to be enjoyed and consumed as a commodity. Also, as government pork barrels are linked to patronage, the indigenous peoples have no choice. During elections, they cannot exercise free will during elections. Sixthly, rights to identity. Indigenous peoples are arbitrarily separated into hills and plains tribes, and the government has deprived the plains indigenes their indigenous status, kind of like the non-indigenous Canadians in Canada. As a result, we found indigenous peoples with and without indigenous status. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I would now like to call on the members of the Presidential Advisory Committee on Human Rights. I was informed that at least one person would like to take the floor.
好。
Yes, I'm a member of the advisory committee, Wang Youling. My apologies for having to present in Mandarin Chinese. First of all, I would like to thank all the experts for coming to Taiwan to perform the review. I believe this morning you have seen that representatives from our civil society have high hopes and expectations from all of you. This is really important for us in Taiwan. In fact, during our first term in the advisory committee, we completed the national initial report. However, we also face a predicament, that is, we were there as consultative roles. So we do not make the decisions. And I am one of the few members on the committee who has a background in civil organizations. Well, so it's really difficult to wrap things up in such a short period of time. All I can say is, while we wrote the national report, we listened to the opinions of the civil groups. But when we actually drafted the report, we had to respect the reports produced by different government agencies and bodies. In other words, what we can do at this committee is to leave out certain parts of the reports written by the government agencies that do not really fully reflect the reality. In other words, we will have to rely on your insights to identify the shortcomings and weak points in these reports. I think this afternoon there will be more time for dialogue between you and representatives from government agencies and NGOs. I'm sure you can tell whether Taiwan government has fulfilled its commitment to implementing the two covenants, and whether the government has plans for implementing these covenants more fully in the future. But we know that the civil society is always 1 or 2 steps ahead of government. So once again, I would like to thank you all for your presence. I wish you an enjoyable stay in Taiwan. And I hope you will enjoy the weather and delicious food here we have in Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for your wishes. Is there another member of the Presidential Advisory Committee who would like to take the floor? Yeah, please.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chairperson. And I would like to thank all the experts coming from afar, as well as representatives from civil society. My greetings to Ms. Wang, who is the predecessor to my tenure, to my term as a member of the committee. So Commissioner Wang is my predecessor. Well, I would like to use a few minutes to extend my appreciation to the panel of experts for coming to Taiwan to help our efforts to promote and safeguard human rights. As far as I know, President Ma Ying-jeou is sincerely committed to this endeavor. We are not government officials. We come from the civil society. But we all want to make Taiwan a better society. I think that's why President Ma recruited us to sit on the committee. But we are also new to this task. So we do not have sufficient experiences, so please do bear with us. I think it is great that we get to listen to opinions of different civil organizations. But I wonder if we have pulled together all the opinions of different organizations beforehand so that the experts could have reviewed all the opinions before the meeting took place. Moreover, I think it is a pity that many government agencies failed to respond to the calls made by different civil organizations. Government officials must respond to these calls in a timely manner. In fact, this morning, I took down a lot of notes on my notepad, but I did not see any government official sitting right next to me, listening to all the opinions. So this afternoon, there will be more government officials, representatives of different government agencies joining us. I know that many of you are professors, and professors are very meticulous about details. Especially professors pay close attention to due process of law. So we want to do things effectively and efficiently. Most of you are professors. I'm sure you would feel the same way as I do right now. But in any case, we do have a shared vision, that is to help Taiwan to do a better job in protecting human rights. I also hope that you as experts in human rights area can help us, Taiwan, lend a helping hand to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we break for lunch, I would like to give still 2 representatives of organizations for persons with Physical and Mental Disabilities. The floor. The first is the League of Welfare Organizations for the Disabled, Terry Lee.
Distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Terry Lee. I wear two hats. I'm a lawyer, an attorney. Also, I am blind. Today, I'm here to represent the League of Welfare Organizations for the Disabled, ROC. The League was established in 1990. During the past 23 years, the League is one of the biggest advocacy groups for the disabled people. There are more than 100 members to our League. And during the past 2 decades, we have promoted many policies to safeguard the interests of the disabled. 2 representatives from 2 organizations, including Professor Chen, Professor Huang, said that we should sign more international covenants and conventions. I would like to follow up on that. We believe that the ROC should sign the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Some people may wonder, we have signed the 2 covenants, ICCPR and ICESCR. Why do we need to sign CRPD? I have to say that the world has been designed in a way to facilitate the needs of the people without any physical or intellectual disabilities. That's why the 2 covenants we are reviewing right now do not take fully consideration the needs of the disabled. First of all, the 2 covenants indeed have a wide coverage of a range of human rights. However, they were not designed with the disabilities as their focus in the first place. That's why the provisions in these 2 covenants do not provide direct benefits for the disabled groups. I'll give you a couple of examples. First of all, in Taiwan, the community-based support system for the disabled is very lacking or if insufficient in Taiwan. As a result, people with mental or physical disabilities are find it difficult to receive education or find employment like ordinary people. As a result, their family members will have to take care of these people, posing a severe burden on these families. So whether or not a disabled person can take part in social life is an important issue, not only for himself or herself, but also for his or her family. But this is not an issue handled or tackled by the 2 covenants. As I said, these family members will be the main caregivers. This gives rise to another issue. Existing laws and regulations related to the disabled in Taiwan focus mainly on the welfare policies and benefits. However, sometimes the disabled people need to ensure their basic human rights, such as the right to vote. It's not about giving care or taking care of the disabled. The basic human rights of the disabled are not highlighted enough in the two covenants. Nor has Taiwan done enough in this area. That's why we strongly recommend that Taiwan should sign the CRPD. Moreover, each NGO speaks for a disadvantaged group which faces different social issues. However, the disabled, as far as I know, faces the widest range of social issues in their lives compared with other disadvantaged groups. In terms of Taiwan's demography, Taiwan has 23 million people. As many as 1.1 million people are recognized and registered disabled people. So, in terms of human rights and the demographic weight, the disabled has to be recognized. That's another reason we believe the ROC should sign the CRPD. Lastly, government's reply number 2, we would like to respond to that. In 2007, we amended the ROC Act on the protection of welfare and rights of the disabled. And the government said that particular act has followed the framework of the CRPD, so there's no need for the ROC to sign the CRPD. However, I think the rights and interests of the disabled are very widespread. For example, if we go to a movie, you will hear the dialogue between different actors. There will also be the plots of the story. For a blind audience member, they need to have someone orally explain to him or her so that he can understand what's going on in the movie. However, in many media-related laws and regulations in Taiwan, we do not have such detailed attention to the needs of the people with disabilities. So we need to sign the CRPD. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And the last speaker is Chun-Chi Lin from the New Vitality Independent Living Association. That's fine. Please, you have the floor, madam. No, it's fine. It's fine. You can. Perfect.
各位委员、各位与会者，大家好，我是林君
Committee members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My work is to help people with disabilities to have a life in communities instead of being separated from the communities or being sent to some homes. We also work very hard to protect the rights of the people with disabilities. As you can see, I am myself a person with disabilities. So my bones are very fragile. I am inclined to bone fractures. And so I need to stay in an accessible and comfortable environment in order to have a better life. But as you can see, in Taiwan, on the street and in many places are not accessible. And we think people with disabilities constitute a unique group because without proper supports, we don't even have the ability to leave our house, to leave our homes. And therefore, it is difficult for us to integrate into the social communities. And sometimes we don't even have the opportunities to be discriminated against because we are invisible to them. And many people with disabilities die without knowing their neighbors, or many family members of this person does not know him or her. This is very common for people with disabilities in Taiwan. If this person has serious disabilities, then he or she is more prone to discrimination. In Taiwan, 4.66% of the total population in Taiwan are people with disabilities. It is a relatively small community. So, in many cases, we need to adapt ourselves to the rules or regulations that are designed for the majority of the population. It is common that we cannot use the stairs or the elevators in some restaurants because there are no accessible facilities. There are such situations because there are no stringent laws or regulations to protect the rights of the people with disabilities. And even though we can leave our house and homes and to engage in social activities, these people with disabilities are still asked to adapt to social norms. Therefore, life has become very challenging. So being able to have a life, being able to integrate into the society is more difficult. And based on some statistics, people with disabilities who are over 15 years of age only 65% have middle school education, not 100%. So apparently, the government has ignored the fact that many of the people with disabilities have not been able to receive proper education and therefore cannot pursue a better economic life. And there are many services that come with a price tag, and it comes with some limitations as well. So even though the government on their surface says that there are some services that are provided for people with disabilities, but we have to follow their rules. And if we don't, we are not being able to enjoy those services. And the obligation to take care of the disabled is transferred back to the family members of the disabled by the government. And when there is no such a person in the family, the disabled have no choice but to be sent to nursing houses. This keeps happening again and again, and we think it is about time that the government has recognized us as a very important community, and we have our human rights. And we don't want our family members' human rights being infringed because they have to take care of us. So the services and the legal framework have to be designed based on the actual need of the disabled. Or while old age people will one day all need social benefits, when there isn't a good legal system for the disabled, we will not be able to enjoy the services that are enjoyed by the rest of the society. To solve this problem, just as Mr. Lee just said, we want the government to sign CRPD so that the daily challenges can be resolved for the persons with disabilities. Thank you very much.
Again, thank you very much for your intervention, which brings us to the end of this morning session. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all my colleagues that we are very impressed by the variety of non-governmental organizations active in the field of human rights in Taiwan, and all the information that you provided us already in writing were extremely useful. I do apologize to those on the list who could not speak this morning, but as I said, there will be another joint meeting with non-governmental organizations alone between 17:15 and 19 hours, so almost 2 hours, where we will then continue with the same list and hopefully also allow others to take the floor. Finally, we are now starting at 2 o'clock, between 2 and 5, the first joint public meeting with government representatives to review the core document. But as you all know, these are public meetings. So while the room itself seems to be fairly small, there is also webcasting, and there is the possibility for all of you to follow our discussions in rooms in the same floor and the floor below. So I do invite everybody to attend these meetings and follow our discussions now in the afternoon with governmental representatives. In this sense, I thank you all very much and enjoy the lunch, and I hope to see you again at 2 o'clock and then later at 5:15. Thank you.
感谢各位委员、长官以及贵宾的参与。那本阶段会议到此告一段落。那请各位贵宾不要忘记将您手中的同步翻译耳机拿到1楼的报到处兑换回您的证件。谢谢。